All right, good morning. So after the snow day, I hope you guys are feeling rejuvenated and ready to go, because today, we start some stuff that you have not seen before, and it's going to get a little bit tougher here. So I decided to make a video for today. I'll probably still post the key, so hopefully you guys have been taking advantage of that. All right, so let's go ahead and get straight into this, shall we? So warm up. We are going to learn about multiplying polynomials. And the first thing we're going to do is learn how to do it when you're multiplying a monomial by a polynomial. So mono means one, and poly means many. So in this case, we have a one term times a two term. So this would be a monomial times a binomial. Well, it's pretty simple, right? Like if this just said 2 times x plus 3, you would distribute the 2. Well, we're going to do the same thing actually in this case, only now instead of it saying 2, it says 2x. So it's still a distributive property. So we're going to simplify it, and we're going to multiply through 2x times x. All right, so what you have to pay attention to is, what is the coefficient here? Well, there's a coefficient. It's an imaginary 1. So this is like saying 2 times 1, which is 2, and x times x, which is x squared. Okay, so then what is 2x times 3? Well, 2 times 3 is 6. And then there is no other variable, so it just remains a singular x. So there's our answer. So anytime you multiply an x times an x, it gives you an x squared. X times nothing gives you x, or I shouldn't say nothing, but 1. And then 2 times 3 gives you 6. Okay, let's continue with this second example. So now we have a monomial times a trinomial, because there are 1, 2, 3 terms. All right, so multiply, 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 and I'll just do them all at once, actually, or I'll just do it individually, I'm sorry. So 3 times 2 is 6. X squared times x squared, remember that's a base times a base, so we talked about that. So you add the exponents, so this would be x to the 4th. Okay, then we multiply through the second one, so 3 times 3 is 9. X squared times x is, you add the exponents, so that would be x to the 3rd. And then 3x squared times negative 4 gives you negative 12x squared. Okay, so that's how you multiply a monomial and a trinomial. Multiply all the way through all components. Coefficients times coefficients, variables times variables. Okay. All right, so those are kind of the easy ones, because you have this monomial who gets distributed through. But then sometimes you have where you have two binomials. Okay, and this is kind of weird, because now instead of it just being one term out front, you have 1 and 2 that you have to distribute. So we call this double distribution, or it's more commonly known as the FOIL method, which stands for firsts, outside, inside, last. Okay, so however you want to think about it, but basically, since there are two terms, you have to multiply the x times the x and the x times negative 6, which would give you x squared and negative 6x. But then, so that would be the first term times the first term, the outside term times the outside term. But then you also have to distribute the inside terms, right? That 5, it hasn't even been touched yet. Okay, so this would be the inside last. So first, outside, inside, last. Inside is a positive 5x. 5 times a negative 6 is a negative 30. Okay, so you could also think of it, like I said, as double distribution. So I'm distributing the x to both, and then I'm distributing the positive 5 to both. Or you can consider it the FOIL method. First terms, outside terms, inside terms, last terms. Okay, either way works. Now, when you get to this point, this is where it changes a little bit. Notice that we now have like terms. So we are going to simplify this down. Negative 6x and negative 5x just gives me negative 1x minus 30. So there's our answer. That's how you multiply two binomials. Okay, let's do it again here. Only this time, instead of using double distribution, here's another method you could use. It's called the box method. Okay, so you've done this in elementary school. It's called the partial products. So same idea. Okay, we have to distribute and multiply, right? But instead of doing it that way, what we're going to do is we're going to list all the terms along the outside of the boxes. So we have, in the first one, we have x and a negative 3. So we're going to put an x and a negative 3. And then we have the second term, which is x and a positive 2. So x and a positive 2. Okay, so now when filling out this box, you just multiply the column by the row. So x times x is x squared. Okay, 2 times x is 2x. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. And 2 times negative 3 gives you negative 6. So again, combine your like terms. Okay, we got like terms here, so our answer would be x squared minus x minus 6. And that's our answer. Okay, so I'm okay with you using either of those methods. All right, so example 3, use your method, whatever you choose. I personally like double distribution, so we're going to do that. Okay, but it doesn't matter to me if you use box method. I understand why students use box method because it's easy to set up. You just draw a box with 4 squares and then put your outside, right, x and 5, and then just multiply through. But 2x times x gives me 2x squared. 2x times a positive 5 gives me, 2 times 5 is 10, so this gives me 10x. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and negative 4 times 5 is a negative 20. So just make sure that you're distributing, and you got to think like each one has to get a touch, right? So 2x has to touch 5, it has to touch x. Negative 4 has to touch x, negative 4 has to touch 5. So each component has to touch one from the other side, okay? All right, so 2x squared plus 6x minus 20 should be our result here. And that's because, again, you simplify like terms, 10x and 4x. Okay. Let's try box method for those of you that want to do it. Okay, so again, we're going to go like this. Set up a box of 4 squares. We have an x and a positive 3, x and a negative 3. Okay, so x times x is x squared. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. X times a positive 3 is a positive 3x. And then negative 3 and positive 3 gives you a negative 9. So again, combining like terms, negative 3x and a positive 3x actually cancel out, and that may happen sometimes. So that gives us just x squared minus 9. There is no middle term, okay? All right, so let's keep going. All right, so you have example 5. Now this is the one that students struggle with the most, and that's because there's this 2 on the outside. So we talked about before where you would apply the 2, only you can't do that in plus. Or in a binomial. So if you have something that has 1, 2 terms, you are not allowed to distribute the 2. This would be wrong. Okay? Instead, remember what does it actually mean when you have an exponent of 2? Well, it means I have that same thing times itself. Okay? So watch what happens if I had distributed the 2 and why it doesn't work. I would get x squared plus 36, right? And again, we know that does not equal that, so that's the wrong answer. But watch what happens when I actually use the correct property, where this is saying this is squared. So I have this times itself, right? 2 times. Okay, so if we use the FOIL method, first times first is x squared. This times this is 6x. This times this is 6x. And this times this is 36. Okay, now look at what our solution should be. This should be our solution. Look at the difference. Okay, up here, there's no middle term. Well, that's a huge difference, right? If I plug in a number for x, it's going to give me a way bigger number down here. So that proves that you are not allowed, when you have a binomial, to distribute that exponent. That does not work, okay? That is a bad thing. So do not do that. So instead, expand it out and then multiply it. All right, so what happens is we continue to get a little bit more complicated. Well, now you have more tiers where you have like a binomial times a trinomial. But it's the same idea, okay? You distribute the 2x to everything, and then we're going to distribute the negative 3 to everything, okay? So same idea, distribute what's in the first set of parentheses to everything in the second. So 2x times x squared gives me 2x cubed, because you add the exponents. 2x times negative 4x gives me negative 8x squared. And then 2x times 5 gives me 10x. Okay, now I'm going to do the blue one. So negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. Notice how I'm writing it below just because they both have an x squared. Oops. They both have an x squared, right? Negative 3 times x squared gives me negative 3x squared, and this already did. So that's just going to help me simplify later, that's all. Negative 3 times 4x gives me plus 12x, and negative 3 times a positive 5 gives me negative 15. Okay, so negative 3 times 4, negative 4x, negative 3 times positive 5. Okay, so now look, I have it actually written where there are like terms, so I can just simplify down, right? Negative 8x squared, negative 3x squared gives me negative 11x squared. This gives me 22x, and this gives me negative 15. And there's our solution. Okay, so that one had a few more terms to it, but that's okay. Box method, same idea. Okay, 3x, positive 1, 2x squared, negative 5x, positive 7. Okay, but same concept. 3 times 2 is 6, x squared times x is x cubed. 2x squared times 1 gives me 2x squared. This would be negative 15x squared. This would be negative 5x. This would be 21x. This would be 7. Now combine your like terms. These two are like terms. These two are like terms, right? You got here and here. So 6x cubed minus 13x squared plus 16x plus 7. And there's our solution. Because you can't simplify any further. Okay. All right, same thing for this last one. Again, as it gets more complicated, choose whatever method you prefer. I'm going to just do this one again. So 5x times x squared is 5x cubed. 5x times 3x is 15x squared, because x times x. And 5x times negative 4 is negative 20x. Okay. Do the bottom side here. Negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 6x, positive 8. Okay, add them together. 13x squared, negative 26x, and positive 8. Done. Okay, so that's how you do multiplying polynomials. We gave you a bunch of different examples here. Now you have an exit ticket, and as you'll notice, they're the same things that we did up above. So if you're struggling, look above and see what we did. I drew some boxes here. You only have to use one method, your choice, okay? This is a platter here. Choose what you want, okay, and finish. Excuse me.